for joining us today. Today I am joined by Jim Mallory, and we're going to be talking about AR on autopilot. And I'm excited to have Jim here today. There's a couple of housekeeping notes I'd like to point out before we get started here. There's two buttons. If you can take a look at the webinar pane next to your name, there's a question mark and there's a hand. So if you should have any questions throughout the presentation, we just encourage you to click on that question mark and a dialog box will open up and you can key in your question, and we're going to reserve questions for the end of the presentation. We'll announce your question for Jim, and with that said, I'm going to go ahead and let Jim get started. Thank you so much, Jim.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Adrienne, and thank you, ERP VAR. Why don't we get started? We've got a lot to go through today. We're going to talk about putting your accounts receivable on autopilot, 6 ways that you can potentially automate the AR process. So hopefully you get a little bit out of this today. These are the 6 things we're going to cover. We're going to talk about how to automate account assignment to accounts receivable professionals, credit collection staff, how to automate the creation of tasks and activities for your collection staff, how to automate customer communication, which is a big one, right? Automating all kinds of different things that, kind of mundane things that we have to do every single day is just part of managing the AR process. We're going to talk about automating invoice presentment and giving our customers the option to make payments online. Automating some elements of dispute management. Certainly there's things in that process that we can automate. Other things are more manual. And then wrap it up with the last 2 here, automating issue escalations if we have issues with accounts or accounts receivable, and automating alerts to keep everybody informed on what's happening. And then last but not least is really just automating the KPIs, the key performance indicators, the metrics, and the reports that we need to understand how we're doing. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and dig in. I do want to start off by just talking about the business case for AR automation. There's a lot of companies that have automated AP on the payable side, but what we found is that there's not a lot of companies that have automated the accounts receivable side. And I think there's a reason for that. I think it's because until in the last couple of years, there really haven't been great solutions available, especially for the lower end of the market. There have been some solutions out there, kind of the tier 1 space, SAP, Oracle world, that helped on the receivable side. But there really wasn't nothing down, QuickBooks on Peachtree or Sage 50 on up to, a Sage, a Microsoft, or some of the other mid-market ERP applications. So I think now is really the time in history when a lot of companies are starting to look at solutions to automate receivables. We're going to kind of talk about what the business case is there for it. So one of the things I always like to start off with is just talking about receivables in general. How important are your receivables? Well, for most companies, your AR is probably your largest or your second largest asset. You think about a manufacturer, you may be thinking capital equipment, professional service firm, you might be thinking your staff, your employees. But if you look at it, there's a good chance that your accounts receivable is one of your largest assets in your business. And it just makes sense. If we're able to convert that receivables into cash faster, we're going to dramatically improve our cash flow and our access to working capital. A couple stats here. Most businesses are getting paid in about 61 days, which that doesn't sound too bad, does it? But let's look at this in comparison to average credit terms, which are 28 days. So on average, as a community of businesses across industries, we're telling our customers you have 28 days to pay us, but they're taking 61 days. Doesn't really make sense to me. Companies that are implementing systems like ours or like our competitors, because there's others out on the market, really any way to automate AR, are getting about a 20% reduction in their DSO. Fancy word for they're getting paid 20% faster. So if we look at, on average, 61 days, and we're looking at about 10 to 20%, let's call it 15% faster, that's 9 days. So your 61 then is going to go down to, what, 52. So who wouldn't want to get paid 9 days faster? Just makes sense. Something else that we know is that the longer an invoice goes unpaid, the less likely that we will ever receive payment, or at least payment in full. Right? It's very important for us to be proactive at the front of the cycle. The minute that invoice is past due, the customer needs to know that, and we can automate that. We can automate a reminder saying you have invoices coming due in the next 3 days. We can automate reminders. These invoices are due today. We can automate reminders. Hey, these invoices are now past due. So what we've found, and some of the statistics that we've uncovered in our research, is that if you allow an invoice to age and they get to 3 months, you're only going to collect about 74% of those, so about 3/4 of those. You let those age out to about 6 months, and the number is kind of scary, to be honest with you. You're going to collect about 30% of those. You let them get out to 12 months old, and you'll be lucky to collect 10%. So again, just want to emphasize it's really important that we're more proactive on the front half, and we can use automation to do that. This is some information that we've gathered from PayStream Advisors. They're an analyst firm. They cover the AR and AP automation space. And one of the studies that they did shows on the left here a traditional collections process. So in traditional collections, this is manual, right? We're printing agent reports, we're trying to figure out who to call, what to do. And in that area, companies are spending about 15% of their time trying to prioritize who they're going to call, what they're going to do next. They're also then spending about 15% of their time preparing for an email, preparing for a call, or whatever activity is at hand. So that's 30% of their time they're allocating in a manual process. Now over on the right, if you can automate AR, you can take the time that you spend prioritizing and preparing down to 12%. So 30% down to 12%. Now what does that allow you to do? Let's look at that big giant kind of burnt orange color there. In a manual process, you only have about 20% of your time that you're talking to your customers. You're soliciting them for payment. You get over on the right side, that's 62%. That's almost 2/3 of your time you're spending doing what you should be doing, and that's talking to your customers, resolving issues, and getting paid. That's the power of AR automation. A couple more points here. On average, most businesses are writing off about 4% of their accounts receivable annually. Again, that may not sound like much, and you may be doing better than your peers in the industry, but let's say you are writing off 4%. If you're a $10 million company, that's $400,000 a year that you're writing off. How much more would it take you in sales to make up for that? Because that's a direct hit to your bottom line. If you're in an industry like distribution where you're operating on relatively slim, razor-thin margins, you might have to sell an awful lot of product or service to make up for $400,000. Now, even if you're only writing off 1%, that's still $40,000. That's pretty significant. What if we, with automation, could get a very marginal 10% improvement? That's going to save us, in this example here, $40,000 every single year. And I'm telling you right now, obviously we have our software that we represent, but there's others on the market. There are options out there today that aren't going to cost you nearly $40,000. So you're going to get savings in the first year. You can get savings every single year after that. One of the other benefits of using AR automation is you can manage by exception, right? Don't show me the things that don't really matter to me. Let me manage by exception. Let me see a prioritized list of the activities that I need to do. So what am I going to do first thing in the morning? I'm going to call the companies that owe me the most money, that are the highest risk, that are the latest. And I'm going to work my way through that list all the way down to the companies that owe me the least amount of money, that are the lowest risk, that are the least past due. The other thing is, a lot of times, we make notes on papers. I need to make a call to this company. I need to send them an email, and then I don't get to it. But what happens is they make a payment, but I still have it on my list of things to do. I still think I need to make that phone call, and I'm just wasting time. With automation in a lot of the systems available today, I can have the software automatically close an activity if it no longer is valid, right? So it's going to build a list of people that I need to call, companies I need to call, issues I need to deal with. If I don't get to them and I come back in tomorrow, the system's going to update and say, you know what? Yesterday you had 20 activities to do, but 5 customers paid. They're automatically removed from my list. I'm also going to be able to get notifications for risky accounts or all kinds of different things. And we'll talk more about escalations and alerts here in a little bit. But I can really manage by exception and just get the information that's going to be most critical to me. As we talked about on the previous slide, I could spend a heck of a lot more time calling and talking to my customers. And I can look at this in respect to the Pareto principle. You know, we all know that 80% of our revenue, on average, comes from the top 20% of our customers. So why would I print out an agent report and look at everyone? If 80% of my revenue is coming from 20% of my accounts, then 80% of my past dues are probably related to those accounts, if not more, because they're probably my better customers. Let me focus on that 80% of the revenue, those 20% of the customers. If I can focus there and make an improvement, especially with automation, I can move the needle relatively fast. And again, reducing my call prep time, because I'm going to have in a system everything I need at my fingertips. So that's the intro on kind of the business case for AR automation. Let's go ahead and talk about ways we can automate the process. So the first one, I've kind of combined 2 here, so you get a bonus. And that's account and task assignment. So let's talk about how we typically do this today. So most of you on the call, this is your accounts receivable automation process. Not very pretty. What you're doing is you're printing out an agent report, the icon on the left. You might be dumping stuff down to Excel, and then you are manually going through it, maybe with a highlighter if you're printing out that agent report. You're making color codes, you left a message, need to follow up, have a dispute, whatever it happens to be, resend invoices, and you're trying to manage this in a very manual process. You know, it's very difficult to understand what do I need to do, when, and why. With automated accounts receivable, I can do things like automatic account assignment. So I create a new customer in my accounting or ERP system. The data is synchronized into my AR automation software, and that account is automatically assigned to a collector, credit representative, AR professional, whatever you want to call them. And you can create all kinds of different rules on which accounts get assigned to which credit collection staff members. So I mean, this is just an example I have here. You know, this particular user in our software can basically be assigned to accounts that are associated with a particular sales rep back in the ERP system. They can also be limited to only accounts that are created where they're based in the U.S., or we can use different territories, geographies, phone numbers, etc. And we're only going to assign these accounts if the customer happens to have a past due balance. Or when we have all kinds of different criteria that can be used to assign accounts to different people in the organization. Prioritized activities, this is really the main thing that I love about our software. So we have all this data, it's coming in from our accounting system, we're trying to make sense of it. Let the software do it. Let AR automation software do this for us. It's going to look at that and it's going to say, all right, if I look over here in my Actions tab, I have email reminders that need to go out, 2 of those. I can manually do those. I can have those automated. I'm going to make first calls, 15 of those. I have a notification that I've got a customer that requires the PO to be on the invoice, but for whatever reason it wasn't. So that's kind of a notification there. I've got 17 second collection calls I need to make, 1/3 collection call, and then I've got some welcome emails from new customers. And I can prioritize that list so that it's organized top to bottom and highest priority down. We can set up these rules on any of the data. You tell us what your process is, and we'll customize the rules so that your collectors are doing what they need to do when you expect them to be done. So the second way that we can automate, and this one is huge time saver, and that's automating customer communication. So we kind of got like our own little robot here, right, our AR on autopilot. So what are the types of things that we can automatically communicate to customers? Reminders. How many of you on the call today send a reminder to a customer when they have an invoice that's coming due in the next 3 days? Nobody. There isn't a single company that I've talked to that has time to send reminders before they're past due. Just doesn't happen. With AR automation, we can do that. We can look at the invoice due date. We can compare it to today's date. If there's a balance due, we can automatically have an email go out to the contacts at that company, give them either a link to pay online, give them a copy of the invoice, give them an open invoice report, and just remind them, hey, these invoices are coming due in the next 3 days. You still have a balance due. Let us know if there's any issues. Again, we're being proactive on the front half of this process. We can also do the same thing with monthly statements. Our data sync into the ERP system can be scheduled, so that can occur every day, every hour, however frequently you want. And then the rules engine that generates the automation can also be scheduled to occur as frequently or infrequently as you want. So I sync the data, pull in new invoices, new customers. I then have the rules engine run after that. That then generates all of my communication with my customers that are due for a statement every 30 days, receive one. They receive an open invoice report if I want to automate that. I can automate past due notices. I can automate collection and dunning letters. I can automate new custom welcome letters. Right? The first time we invoice a customer, there's a better chance there's going to be an issue with that invoice because we set them up wrong. Let's make it a best practice. Every new customer, first time we invoice them, they get a nice welcome email, and we create a prioritized call for the collector so they know to call and review that first-time invoice. We can automate, really anything. Requests for credit reviews, literally any type of communication you can think other than a phone call. If you can email it, you can fax it, we can automate it. And this is just an example of what one of the emails might look like here. This would be a statement example. Attached is your monthly statement. You can click here to pay your account with a credit card in our secured self-service portal. You can also make a note on invoices in the portal should you have an issue that requires our attention. Now, kindly disregard this email. Payment has already been processed. We will contact you in a few days if payment has not been received. We realize you have many choices, and thank you for your business and look forward to serving your future business needs. And you can see here that we have a copy of the statement. And if they click that hyperlink, it'll take them into our portal, log them in automatically. They'll see their online statement, and they can pay their bill online. We're going to talk about the online kind of customer self-service here in a few minutes. These can all be, again, triggered based on any parameters on any data that are in the system. So segue right into electronic invoice presentment and payment, also called EIPP, a really fancy term for let's get the customer the invoice and give them an easy way to pay it. So this is what most of us are doing today, right? So we've got a manual process. We create an invoice in our accounting system. We print the invoice. We print the invoice. We then stuff it in an envelope and mail it to them. Takes them several days to weeks. On their end, they have to open it. They have to review it. They have to enter a voucher. They have to create a check, print a check, mail a check. Again, days to weeks, potentially months. But if we can automate this, you create the invoice in your accounting system, data synchronized into the accounts receivable automation software. The notifications go out automatically to the customer. You have an invoice, here it is. Here's the link to pay it online. They open the email, they click the link. They pay the invoice, they're done. You reconcile the credit card payments. You're talking potentially days to weeks to months, down to minutes to hours. Now granted, I don't think most customers are going to pay in minutes, but the potential is there, and you certainly are going to give them less of an excuse to pay late when it can be all done online. So from the self-service payment portal, there's a couple things here. Number one, we can automate the email to go out to our customers. We can include that hyperlink so they can access the statement. We can also control which contacts are authorized to make that payment. So you might have 15 contacts at your customer. You may only send certain types of communication with this hyperlink in it to 3 or 4 of them, or maybe 1 of them. You can also control how long that link to the portal is valid in respect to the number of days or the number of clicks. If they go beyond 3 days from the generation of that link, or they click it more than 3 times, it'll basically be terminated and they won't be able to get in. We also have the option to set up customers with a dedicated account so they have a login. They wouldn't access it from a guest link. They would simply go to a website, log in, access their account online. And this is what the online portal looks like. So customer hits it, it's going to give them a statement, kind of an online statement. It's got all of the invoices in here. If you have PDF copies of those invoices, we can also link those so they can view the original invoice online. They select the invoices they want to pay. It tallies it up here at the top. Worth noting, we do support multi-company, multilingual, multi-currency, so you can see the US dollars there. They click Make a Payment, takes them to our secure payment page. And we work with a number of processors such as Sage Payments and a company called SoluPay. So you have options there. You make your payment online. You can do ACH or credit card transaction. You can also have limits on how much you want to accept on a credit card. A lot of companies don't want to take a $10,000 or $20,000 payment on a credit card with the fees. You can force them to do an ACH instead. Everything we do is encrypted, PCI compliant. We actually don't store anything in respect to the credit cards. We leave that on the payment processor, and we're simply using encrypted tokens back and forth. And payment transactions can be synchronized back into most accounting and ERP systems. Contact us for details on that. But that's also something that can really help. As your customers are making payments online, you don't want to have to manually enter these back into your accounting system. Okay. Dispute management. The key to disputes is identifying them early. A little stat here, 49% of disputes may be related to missing or incorrect purchase order information. So the customer says, I need to see my purchase order on the invoice. These are stats we've uncovered through the years. I just wanted to share this here because a lot of us still have problems with that, right? Customer requires the PO to be on the invoice, and it isn't. We can set up an alert within our software, and I think other systems can too, where we synchronize an invoice in from a customer. We've defined them as requiring their PO to be on the invoice. If that PO field is blank, we can notify your collection team or your accounting team that there's a potential problem here. And before it gets to 30 days past due. You're going to know immediately. So a couple things we can do with invoice disputes. We can mark the invoices that are in dispute. If you look over here on the right, you'll see that we have a reason code. This one is FRT. It's my designation for a freight dispute. So we can code them. You can use to define the codes that you want to use. We have analytics then. You can look at how many different disputes that I have by type, maybe do some root cause analysis, try to find out maybe it's your shipper that you're having problems with, maybe it's the packaging, maybe it's your personnel. To really get down to a root cause on why you're having disputes and try to prevent them from happening again. We can also track, if you look over on the left here with the tagged invoices, we can track the date of the dispute, and then we can also put in a resolution date so you can understand a little better how long does it take you to resolve a dispute, as well as the amounts that are in dispute here. Okay. Escalation and alerts. Escalations, let's talk about that for a second. So, most of us, especially in a small business, you might have a part-time AR or AR clerk, or maybe somebody that, they're just not they're not good at managing the more complex negotiations when it comes to customers with a past due balance, and that's fine. What we can do here is we can allow them to manage all of the activities that are maybe under a certain dollar amount. Maybe they can manage everything under $10,000, or maybe we have them manage anything that's under 30 days past due. But the minute that something is over an amount, or whatever criteria or parameters we want to put on it, we can have that escalated to a supervisor. We could have it escalated to a credit manager. We could have it escalated to the controller, the CFO, the president, you name it, so that they are only focused on those really big, really important issues that are going to affect their bottom line. Now, we can do this manually. So if I'm a collector, I'm talking to the customer, and they tell me, look, I don't have any money, I want to work out a payment plan, and I'm not able to do that, I can create an activity for my boss, my supervisor in the software. They log in, and they see everything that I need them to do. Or, again, here over on the right, we have our action alerts. So this is my fourth collection call, and I can see that it's the balance is greater than 100 and the due date is greater than 60 days. Well, that balance could be greater than 10,000, due date greater than 60, 90, whatever I define it as. And over here on the right, you'll see override user. So there's a particular person within my organization that's going to manage these types of escalations. And then automated alerts, right? Again, management by exception. This is just one example that I have up on the screen here. Every grid in the system can be set up with an alert. And what I've done with this particular grid on the left is I've set up an alert called dispute, okay? So if you look at the very bottom, you see the little toolbar, and you'll see the filter icon. I've created a filter, show me any customer that has an invoice in our software that has been marked as in dispute. I then, if you see the little alert icon on that toolbar, created the alert, and the alert is set up to go out to the sales reps or inquiry users or credit users or whoever I define. That can be scheduled to go out daily, hourly, weekly. This example happens to be set up for a weekly dispute report. I put parameters on it. There is a dispute. It's not closed. That's going to go out automatically to the sales reps every single week so that they know what's happening with their accounts. That's pretty cool. Even better than that, they don't even have to go into the software. At the bottom, you'll see the attachment in the email. They can open that report up. It's going to have the same data that we're looking at in the grid in the software, only in the spreadsheet. Or if they really want to, and they're set up as an inquiry user in the software, they click that hyperlink. It takes them back in directly to this view of the information, filtered only to the companies or accounts that are related to them. So again, if I'm a sales rep, I'm not seeing every dispute in the system, just the disputes that are related to my assigned accounts. And that's pretty cool. Let's talk about metrics and reporting. How are we measuring things today in AR? Most of us aren't. Most companies we work with don't know what their day sales outstanding is. Most companies have no idea if their accounts receivable is higher now than it was 6 months ago or a year ago. It's kind of a point in time analysis. We're looking at the aging and trying to guess kind of, is this good, is it bad? Well, let's automate that. Within most of the accounts receivable automation software out there, it's got built-in business analytics. So of course I can look at my current aging, but I can also get analytics and reports down to things like, collection activity. So I have 2 or 3 people in collections. How many calls are they making? How many calls are successful? How many emails are they sending? Are they collecting on time? What's their DSO? What's their average days late for their accounts? How many broken promises do their customers have? I can do things like cash forecasting and projected cash receipts based on my customer's payment history. I can drill down and do all and dicing and analysis by account demographics. Maybe I want to look at my accounts receivable in respect to my government customers compared to my commercial customers compared to my consumer customers. Or maybe I want to look at it by state or by industry. If you have the data set up, we can give you all of that type of analytics either in a dashboard or in reports and inquiries. I can look at it by size of invoice. I can look at it by dispute and resolution. We've done some crazy things for customers in construction and professional services where they wanted to get analytics on accounts receivable by job or by project. We could do all kinds of things around the BI side to help you get a better understanding of what's happening. And again, from an automation perspective, you don't have to calculate all of this. You don't have to dump it to Excel. I mean, you certainly can, but you don't have to. We can present it to you in a grid or in a dashboard. From an inquiry and report standpoint, I can analyze, report on communications, invoices, payments, online payments. I can save views of all of this data. It's kind of my ad hoc queries into the information. I can also, again, if you really want, export this down to Excel and do some ad hoc reporting and analysis in Excel. So that's 6 ways that you can potentially leverage accounts receivable automation. I'm going to do a little wrap up here, a little bit about Anytime Collect. This in a summary is kind of what we do with the application. We can automate your email. We have mail merge templates, whether they're dunning letters, open invoice reports, statements. Those can all be customized. We can also customize email templates. We prioritize your call lists. We help you manage disputes. We have the embedded BI. We also have document management. So if you happen to have customer credit applications, credit reports, credit review documents, you might have supporting documents such as a proof of delivery, a bill of lading, something that would go along with an invoice. Those can also be integrated into the application and into the process. Multilingual translations, whether that's your staff logging in a different language to use the software, or translating documents to your customers. If you're dealing with companies in Quebec or internationally, maybe Mexico, you can translate the communication so they're receiving it in Spanish or French, not in English. Cash flow forecasting, centralizing all that information. You don't have some information in your ERP, other information in CRM, and your emails in your inbox. Everything's in one place. We've got credit and risk management functionality within the software, so you can understand your customers a high or low credit risk. You can make better credit decisions. Should I extend credit terms? Should I change credit terms? Should I increase or decrease credit limits based on things like credit scores? Of course, we have the data sync into the ERP or accounting systems. We have standard interfaces to most ERP and accounting applications out there. We also have a generic CSV interface that can be used with virtually any ERP system on the planet. Credit team management, we have customers that are as small as 1 user, even half of a user, right? I mean, you've got somebody that's just doing part-time AR. Our largest customer has over 100 people in credit collections. Talked about the email alerts and notifications. We also have payment schedules. So if you happen to have a customer and they owe you $10,000, you can break that up into maybe quarterly payments of $25,000, and the software will ignore the original invoice and then look at the payment schedule to determine are they past due or not. And that's really just a summary. I mean, there's actually quite a bit more to the software. These are kind of the major features. Just a little summary, because these are all the FAQs, questions I always get. What ERPs do we integrate with? Out of the box, we've got predefined integrations that we maintain to Sage ERP, Sage 100, Sage 50, Sage 300, Sage 500. On the Microsoft side, it's Microsoft Dynamics GP, Epicor ERP, and there are some others. If you don't have one of those ERP systems, don't fret. Most of our customers are actually using something other than where we have a standard interface. We do also integrate out of the box with QuickBooks online as well as desktop. The other question I get all the time is how much does this cost? Sounds great. You can either buy it or you can subscribe to it. For the QuickBooks version, you can start with that application at $60 per month. Anything else, you're looking at $150 per user per month, so you could start small with one user. Some people look at that and are like, yeah, that sounds kind of high, but when you really dig into it, you're wasting a lot of time trying to prioritize things. In the automation, you're going to get a lot more value just by leveraging the automation. And to be quite honest, I've talked to companies, they're spending $150 a month on a cell phone bill or a couple cell phone bills. So the automation is going to be worth this. Cloud deployed, automatic updates, if you absolutely have to. There are some situations where you might need to have it on premise. That is an option as well. How long does it take to implement? What kind of training is involved? We typically will quote somewhere around 12 hours as a base. If you have a large number of users, you have a more complex process, you want to do some crazy things with online bill pay, that might take a little more. On average, our implementations are about 16 to 24 hours. Some of the larger ones, I think the bigger ones we've done with kind of custom modifications behind the scenes, probably more close to 60 to 80 hours. Embedded customer support. So within the software itself, we leverage Zendesk. We have a knowledge base in there. You can look at the same knowledge base our support uses. We have a customer community. You can ask questions regarding the software or regarding just best practices in AR. We have product tutorials, documentation. You can log support requests. You can close support requests. All kinds of great things right within the embedded support portal. At the end of the day, most of our customers are getting, a minimum of 20% reduction in their DSO. We've had customers that have had 40% reduction in the first year. Probably on average, the ones that we know about are more in that 20 to 30% range. That's going to give you an ROI in about 2 months, which is pretty significant. So just to kind of wrap up here, AR automation isn't right for everyone. There are companies out there that don't need it. And this is a ballpark kind of based on our experience here. If you're managing less than 100 customers, active customers in a month, or maybe less than 100 invoices, you can probably do that without too much automation. You start to get over 100 customers or over 100 invoices, and it becomes a little bit more difficult, especially if you're constrained on resources. And I just want to point out here as well, remember that with AR automation, you can probably expect to get about a 3-time improvement in your ability to actually talk with your customers because you're not working in spreadsheets and disconnected systems. There are some additional resources available. We used to kind of list them all here, but we put together this handy-dandy little resource. It's basically a Word document. We converted it to PDF. And you can see in that you've got some PDF icons and some video icons. So you can download from this single resource all kinds of things. Videos on the software, white papers. They have all kinds of cool things in it, how to reduce invoice disputes, how to develop a credit policy, best practices in credit collections management, call scripts, email templates, you name it. We also have a bunch of recorded educational webinars that are in there. There's just really a ton of resources for you. So hit the website, anytimecollect.com. You'll see resources. We have plastered all over. Fill out the form, and we'll make sure you guys get a copy of this resource guide. So that is it. We're going to wrap up with questions. So I'm going to turn it back over to Adrian. And while we do that, I do want to just point out I do have my contact information on the screen. If you have any questions whatsoever, go ahead and feel free to email me, and I'll get them in the hands of the right people.
Thank you, Jim. Excellent presentation. We do have a couple questions, and I would like just to launch one poll while we're announcing the questions. So if you can just take a moment, audience, to answer this question, that would be great. Are you interested in learning more? And we have a question from Kate. Thank you, Kate. How are rules configured? Here, let me expand this. How are rules configured such as the prioritization of tasks? How are changes in the processes handled? Are these managed by users, or do we need support from your company?
That's a great question. And you know what? It's going to vary across organizations. So when we're working with a smaller company that maybe doesn't have an IT department or power users, typically this is more in the QuickBooks space. Although every once in a while we do find some pretty smart folks, power users, a little more technology adept in that space. But we're always here to help, so we will help. You tell us what goals you want to accomplish with the software. When do you want that first call to happen? When do you want the past due notice to go out? We will show you how to set up the system to do that. And then from there, if you pick it up, for the most part, you're going to be able to administer those rules and those priorities yourself. Now, every once in a while, you're going to maybe want to come up with something that's a little bit out of the box. You may have a question about what field would I use within the software to trigger this to occur. You can always hit our support. You can look in the knowledge base, and it's not going to go anywhere. We're always going to be here to help you with the setup. But our goal is to make our customers self-sufficient. We like to teach you how to do it so that you own the system and you know how to make those changes on a go-forward basis. Sometimes, though, they can be a little complicated, and we'll get a consultant online to kind of point you in the right direction. As far as enabling that down to the user level, we have some companies that do enable users to go in and kind of tweak rules. For the most part, though, that's typically not a best practice. You really want to define what happens when and who does it at a corporate level, and then lock that down so the users are simply reacting to the things that are on their prioritized list, and they can't go in and change those parameters.
And do you have any customers who use CRM, and do they integrate the call history here with this application with their CRM?
We do have customers that have CRM, obviously. To be honest, I'm not sure if any of them have integrated. We've had discussions around integration. It would really depend on the deployment. If you're going with the multi-tenant hosted version of the software, it's not possible for us to get data back into another system. We could do it, with like an alert, but since it's a shared database, you wouldn't be able to get back into it. Now, we do have options if you were to go with a single tenant, kind of a dedicated hosted online database. You could have access to the back end of SQL. You could set up SQL triggers, data mining. You could connect to that data via APIs. That'd be work that you would need to do, or you would need to contract with us or a partner to do. The reason we don't provide a lot of that out of the box is a couple reasons. Number one is there are, 400 or 500 different CRM systems on the market. Granted, there's 4 or 5 of them that are more popular than others, like Sage, Salesforce, Microsoft, etc. But what people want to see back into the software is very different. Some people want to see just phone calls. Some people want to see emails. Which system holds the accounts or the contacts? So it's really a custom decision, I guess, that's going to depend on your needs. So if you want to talk more about that, we can certainly talk offline about your specific requirements and see what we can do to integrate on the CRM side.
And I do see that 87% of the audience has voted. If we could get that to 100%, that would be awesome. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We know that taking 45 minutes now out of your day is hard to come by, so we really appreciate your time. And we are ending, it looks like we're ending a little bit early. And thank you, Jim. Excellent presentation. We really appreciate you educating us on all these points.
Well, excellent. Well, thank you, Adrienne. And I'll just leave everybody with this. A lot of times you see this, maybe it's your first time thinking about AR automation. Go out to the website, do a little bit of research. There's a lot of ways you can validate doing this. Maybe now's not the right time. Maybe you got maybe it's a budgetary issues. But don't forget about it, because AR is important. And with technology these days, there shouldn't be any reason why we can't make our lives a little easier. Maybe we get paid a little faster, but maybe we just make our lives a lot easier. So I just encourage everybody really to kind of tuck this away and maybe come back to it in 3 months or 6 months if now isn't the right time.
And we do have one last question, Jim. Are the slides available? Would you be willing to send JC, thank you for your question, the slides?
Sure, yeah. What I'll go ahead and do, Adrian, if this makes sense, is I'll just send it to you, and if you want to send that as a follow-up to all the attendees, because there may be others that want the slide deck as well.
Perfect. So I'll have that as a link in the follow-up email. I also recorded this webinar, so we'll have a link over to our YouTube channel at YouTube/ERPVAR, and this will be the latest recording on that channel, and I'll send you the link as well, so we can have that in a follow-up. And Jim, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Everybody, take care. Have a fantastic day.
Excellent. Thank you, Adrian.
No problem. My pleasure. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.